bunlarla ilgili bunun yanında birkaç işleyişle ilgili birkaç bilgi vermek istiyorum. Şu an dediğim gibi webinarımız kayıt altına alınıyor ve Avrupa Bağımsız Yaşam Ağı'nın YouTube kanalından canlı olarak yayınlanıyor. Dolayısıyla eğer yani kayıt altına alınan bu webinarda bulunmak istemezseniz YouTube'dan direkt olarak dinleyebilirsiniz. Webinarda İngilizce-Türkçe simultane çeviri ve canlı altyazı hizmetimiz var. Simultane çeviri için alttaki dünya şeklindeki yuvarlak butondan Türkçe kanalını seçebilirsiniz. Canlı altyazı seçeneğini açmak içinse CC yazan bir buton var. O butona tıklamanız yeterli. Altta altyazıyı rahatlıkla görebilirsiniz. Bu konuda bize destek veren Gökçe Katkıcı ve Emrah Kuyumcu'ya da teşekkür ediyoruz. Webinarda sorularınız ve yorumlarınız mutlaka olacaktır. Sorularınızı ve yorumlarınızı her konuğumuzun konuşmasının sonunda alacağız. Ve hani bu esnada yine hatırlatırız zaten ama sorularınızı ve katkılarınızı Zoom'un el kaldırma özelliğini kullanarak, yani raise hand diye bir özellik var. Oradan elinizi kaldırarak ya da mesaj kutusuna Q&A şeklinde, questions and answers şeklinde yazan kısma yazarak bize iletebilirsiniz. Ve hani konuşmadığınız zamanlar dışında mikrofonunuzu da kapalı tutmanızı rica ediyoruz. Evet, şimdi bu kurallardan sonra başlıyorum. Bugün burada European Network on Independent Living ile birlikte yürüttüğümüz engellilerin bağımsız yaşamı ve toplumsal katılımı için kilit bir araç olarak kişisel asistanlık projesi kapsamında gerçekleştirdiğimiz webinar serisinin ikincisi için toplandık. Çok değerli iki konuğumuz var. Önceki webinarımızdan tanıdığınız ve yani çok olumlu da yorum aldığımız Adolf Ratzka bugün de bizimle burada olacak. Çünkü zaten yani kişisel asistan deneyimlerinden bahsetme fırsatı bulamamıştı. Zengin geçen tartışmalar nedeniyle o webinarda ve aynı zamanda Mima Ivanovic bizimle birlikte olacak bugün. Öncelikle her ikisine de hoş geldiniz diyorum. Ve sizlere de bizleri bugün yalnız bırakmadığınız için teşekkür ediyorum. Her zaman olduğu gibi bugün de engellilik alanında düşünen ve bir şeyler üreten kişilerle birlikte olmak çok heyecan verici ve herkese keyifli bir etkinlik diliyorum. Bu webinarımıza da kısaca yine projemizden bahsederek başlayacağız. Ve ilk konuşmamız için sözü projemizin yürütücüsü Lili Angelova'ya bırakmak istiyorum. Kendisi proje partnerimiz Avrupa Bağımsız Yaşam Ağı hakkında kısaca bir bilgilendirme yapacak. Evet, Lili, söz sende.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to all. I'm glad that the second webinar of our series enjoys the same interest as the first one, which was on independent living. I would briefly like to present the European Network on Independent Living, or INO. INO was established more than 30 years ago by disability activists from different European countries. Adolf Ratzka, who you have the privilege to hear today, was the founding chair of INO. INO is a network of disabled people and grassroots organizations of disabled people with members in more than 47 countries. An important part of INO is the INO Youth Network, uniting young disabled people interested and willing to support the advocacy for equal rights of disabled people. And our second speaker today, Miroslava Mima Ivanovic, is a vice chair of the INO's Youth Network. INO advocates and lobbies for independent living values, principles, and practice. And I would just like to remind here that independent living does not mean being able to do things on your own without support from family or from services. What independent living means is that the support people receive is based on their preferences. They have choice and control over their support. Some of the key issues we work on are the institutionalization and personal assistance. The institutionalization refers to the closure of residential institutions for disabled people, which segregate and isolate them from society, and the replacement with support in the community, enabling disabled people to participate in the society on an equal basis with others. And personal assistance is one of the key services supporting disabled people to live independently. And you'll hear more about this from our speakers today. I would like to thanks again, Adolf and Mima, for joining us today. Thank you.
Özür dilerim, mikrofonumu kapalı unuttum. Lili çok teşekkür ediyoruz demiştim. Şimdi de Engelli Kadın Derneği ve Pakt Projesi hakkında bilgilendirme yapmak üzere projemizin Türkiye'deki yürütücüsü Bahar Yavuz'a sözü bırakmak istiyorum. Bahar, sendeyiz.
Herkese merhabalar. Umarım sesim iyi bir şekilde geliyordur. Engelli Kadın Derneği de yaklaşık 11 yıl önce kurulmuş, engelli kadınlardan kurulmuş ve hem engellilik hem de kadın hareketinde engelli kadınların kendilerine yer bulamaması sonucunda kurulmuş bir sivil toplum kuruluşu. Ve ENİL ile birlikte Pakt projesi başladığı geçen sene Nisan ayından itibaren Türkiye'de az konuşulan bağımsız yaşam meselesini, engelli bireylerin haklarından biri olan bağımsız yaşam meselesini konuşulur bir hale getirmeye çalışıyoruz ve aynı zamanda bu hakkın temini için önemli modellerden ve hizmetlerden biri olan kişisel asistanlığın Türkiye'de tanınması ve yaygınlaştırılması ile ilgili çalışıyoruz. Bununla ilgili olarak da ilk webinarımızı Kasım ayında gerçekleştirmiştik ve ilk webinarımızın kaydını aslında bu webinarımızın duyurusunda paylaşmıştık ama yine de sonrasında paylaşıyor oluruz. Kaçıranlar için, bunu dinleme, izleme fırsatı bulamayanlar için. Ve Aralık ayında yine bu projemiz kapsamında Türkiye'de engelli bireylerin bağımsız yaşam hakkının durumuyla ilgili bir analiz raporu ortaya koyduk ve analiz raporunda aynı zamanda kişisel asistanlık sisteminin Türkiye'de ne kadar bilindiğiyle ilgili de bir analiz yapma şansımız oldu. Bağımsız yaşam meselesini hem mevzuat açısından hem uygulamalar açısından hem de engellilerle çalışan sivil toplum kuruluşu temsilcileri, engellilere hizmet sunanlar, politika yapıcılar ve engelli bireylerin kendilerinin bu konuyla ilgili Türkiye'deki bağımsız yaşam hakkına erişimle ilgili ne düşündüğünü iletme ve toparlama şansı bulduk. Şimdi de ikinci webinarımızı çok değerli iki konuğumuzla beraber yapıyoruz. Bugün heyecanlı ve mutluyuz. Kişisel asistanlık deneyimiyle ilgili daha fazla konuşma şansına sahip olacağız bugün. Deneyimleri dinliyor olacağız ki bu çok önemli aslında. Teoriden çok deneyimler üzerinden konuşmak. Çünkü biliyoruz ki biz hem bağımsız yaşam hareketi hem engellilik hareketi açısından kişisel asistanlıkla ilgili bütün savunuculuklar tamamen insanların kişisel hikayeleri ile başlayan ve kişisel mücadelelerle başlayan bir süreç. Engellilik hareketi bu açıdan ve bağımsız yaşam hareketine baktığınızda bu açıdan oldukça önemli ve bugün biz de Türkiye'de belki de benzer meselelerle ilgili sorun yaşamış ve aslında kişisel asistanlığın kendi kişisel hikayelerinde bir çözüm olabileceği yeni insanlara dokunma şansına kavuşacağız diye ümit ediyorum. Hepimize keyifli bir webinar diliyorum ve konuklarımıza tekrar Mima'ya ve Adolf'a tekrar hoş geldiniz diyorum. Teşekkürler.
Çok teşekkürler Bahar, sana da. Gerçekten benim de duygularımı çok güzel özetlediğini düşünüyorum. Ben de bugün çok heyecanlıyım çünkü yani gerçekten kişisel asistanlıkla ilgili bir etkinliğe ev sahipliği yapıyor olmak ve yani bu kadar değerli konukları bir arada bulundurmak benim için çok değerli ve heyecan verici gerçekten de. Dolayısıyla hani çok fazla da vakit almak istemiyorum ve yani ilk olarak sözü Adolf Ratzke'ye bırakacağım. Geçen webinarımızda kaldığımız yerden devam ediyor olacağız. Ama ona sözü vermeden önce kendisini birazcık tanıtayım sizlere. Adolf Ratzke şu anda 77 yaşında, Almanya'da büyümüş. 1961 yılında geçirdiği çocuk felci nedeniyle şu anda ventilatör, yani solunum cihazı ve akülü sandalye kullanıyor ve bir kişisel asistanı var. Kişisel asistan kullanıcısı kendisi. Akademik eğitimini 1966-1973 yılları arasında Los Angeles'ta Kaliforniya Üniversitesi'nde alınmış ve ardından İsveç'e taşınmış. 1983-1994 yılları arasında ise Stockholm'da araştırma ekonomisti olarak çalıştı ve dünya çapında erişilebilir çevre ile ilgili seminerler düzenledi. 1994-1998 yılları arasında İsveç Engellilik Ombudsmanlığı konsey üyesi olarak çalıştı. Kendisi aynı zamanda Stockholm Bağımsız Yaşam Kooperatifi, STIR'in kurucusu ve başkanı ve aynı zamanda 1989-1992 yılları arasında Avrupa Bağımsız Yaşam Ağı'nın da kurucu başkanlığını yaptı. Bağımsız Yaşam Enstitüsü'nün de kurucu başkanı ve yöneticisi, Birleşmiş Milletler Engelli Hakları Komitesi'nin engellilik ve bağımsız yaşam ile ilgili çalışmalarına destek oldu. Şu anda da bağımsız yaşam ve kişisel asistanlık alanında yazılar yazıyor ve dersler veriyor. Evli ve bir kızı var. Bugün de bizimle kişisel asistanlık ile ilgili bilgi ve deneyimlerini paylaşıyor olacak. Davetimizi kabul ettiğiniz için teşekkür ederiz Adolf. Sözü size bırakıyorum ve heyecanla anlatacaklarınızı bekliyorum.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Since I don't know how many of you heard me speak in the first webinar a couple of months ago, and how much you remember of what I said, I will recapitulate just a few major points. I'll be short because I want to leave time for many questions. First, briefly about the independent living movement itself and the principles of independent living. The independent living movement started in California at the University of California in Berkeley in the late 1960s, when students with extensive disabilities and need of personal assistance with the activities of daily living were first admitted. Soon they organized themselves and succeeded in getting funds to help them find accessible housing, hire personal assistants, make the university campus more accessible, etc. A few years later, they founded the first Center of Independent Living, which was to assist not only students, but everybody with a disability to live in the community with personal assistance, accessible housing, accessible public transportation, a more accessible city with wheelchair accessible sidewalks, acoustic traffic signals for sight impaired people, and much more. The CIL, Center for Independent Living, put political pressure on the city and on the state of California to include the needs of disabled people in city planning and other infrastructure planning. Soon, disabled people in other parts of California and in other states organized themselves and started centers for independent living throughout the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, other European countries, Japan, South Africa, and other parts of the world. After half a century, the term independent living today is widely used in policy documents and government programs the world over. One of our biggest achievements is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, a document that is permeated by the spirit and the ideology of independent living. For me, independent living is foremost a civil rights movement, a movement of people whose lives have been limited by thoughtlessness, ignorance, prejudice, and outright oppression. A movement of people who have been robbed of opportunities to develop and benefit from their innate potential. A movement of people who in self-help groups and become aware of the prejudices and oppression many of us have internalized and turned against themselves. So what are the principles of independent living? Most people with disabilities are not helpless or dependent because of their disabilities. They are made dependent and helpless by their countries, political priorities, and the culture of dependency. So what does the culture of dependency consist of? First, the medicalization of disability, where disability is seen as a medical issue, where the problem and its solutions lie within the individuals, not with society. Then we have the professionalization, with medical doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, etc., who treat and train, protect and guide us through life. The more power they have, the less power we have over our lives. Then we have the lack of self-representation, which means that many disability organizations are still controlled by non-disabled persons. How credible would be a feminist organization that is headed by men? Then we have the brainwashing. Our culture and language is full of negative expressions regarding disability and disabled people. For example, the term invalid, which literally means of no value. Growing up in such a culture, we often internalize these attitudes and suffer from low self-esteem and low self-respect. Then we have all these self-fulfilling prophecies. When people expect very little of us, we do not need to try something difficult. Without successes, without failures, we will not be able to grow as a person. And our example will confirm society's prejudice that disabled people are incompetent and helpless. Then we have, in our cultures, no freedom of choice and self-determination. Typically, disabled children cannot go to all schools. With luck, there might be one school in town that admits disabled students. The same goes for workplaces, housing, transportation, and shops. And then we have discrimination. We cannot pick and choose like other people because workplaces, shops, and restaurants have not been made accessible for us, or because we are excluded from participation by laws, regulations, or prejudices against us. So how do we break that culture of dependency? The independent living movement works for anti-discrimination legislation, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 in the US. We work for control over our own organizations and our self-representations in them. We use peer support, where we train ourselves to take on more responsibilities for our lives. We work for demedicalization and for deprofessionalization. That is, in our movement, your diagnosis is completely unimportant. What counts is our common experience of discrimination. We work for deinstitutionalization, That is, we liberate our disabled brothers and sisters from institutions by working for community-based solutions. And in doing this, we try to get people out of institutions by working for cash payments instead of services in kind. Most countries pay more money for keeping someone in an institution than enabling that person to live in the community. For example, the government of Spain pays 2,500 euros a month to an institution for keeping one person in the institution. But the government pays only 780 euros a month to an individual who needs personal assistance services for living in the community. 2,500 for living in an institution, 780 for living out of the institution. The independent living movement works for so-called direct payments in all countries. Direct payments are cash payments from the state to the persons who need personal assistance services for living in the community. Cash payments enable us to buy personal assistance services from the service providers we prefer and enables us to custom design our personal assistance according to our individual needs and personal preferences. And that is the reason why we call them personal assistance services. Payments are based on needs in terms of the number of assistance hours we need, and not whether the service provider is public or private, for profit or not for profit, or whether we employ our assistants ourselves. I give you an example. In Sweden, we've had such a system of direct payments from the National Social Insurance Fund since 1994. With the payments today, about 14,000 assistance users can afford to buy personal assistance services from local governments and from almost 1,000 private companies. I should mention that Sweden has a population of about 10 million people. In Sweden, there are altogether 70,000 personal assistants. Personal assistance has become a real market in Sweden, a market that is driven by the demand from assistance users, a market where providers compete with each other for customers on the basis of service quality, a market where we, the assistance users, have the freedom of choice. Before 1994, the local governments had the responsibility of providing community-based services of that kind. It was a supply-driven service. That means the municipality decided on a budget for these services each year. And with that budget, a certain number of staff were employed who were sent home to us users. The local government decided who was to work for us, no matter whether we liked and trusted these persons or not, no matter whether they did a good job or not. They did what the municipality told them to do and not what we needed. It was a supply-driven service. The local government was the only provider. We had no choice. The quality of services was not even mentioned. As service users, we had nothing to say. We are forced into a passive, powerless role with no responsibilities. Today, we get direct payments. That's a fantastic instrument for empowerment. As recipients of cash payments, the government and the taxpayers believe in our ability to make decisions in our both best interests in selecting the services that best fit our needs. Before the reform, we used to be called the weakest of the weak. Now, we are customers and employers. It's been a real revolution. With these services, people are able to transform themselves from powerless, helpless objects of care into subjects, into people who can make plans, because now they have the practical means to make their plans come true. I could tell you many stories about how personal assistance can change our lives. Here's my favorite one. It's my own story. In Germany in 1961, at the age of 17, I contracted polio. As a result, I've been using a ventilator, an electric wheelchair, and increasing assistance with the activities of daily living ever since. In 1966, after 5 years in the hospital, a scholarship enabled me to move from the hospital ward in Munich, Germany, to a dormitory room at the University of California in Los Angeles. The transition from patient to student was made possible by the scholarship that not only covered my expenses as a student, but also contained direct payments for personal assistance. With that money, I hired, trained, paid, scheduled, and supervised fellow students as my assistants. I was able to pay them competitive wages, that is, wages that they would have earned for working on campus at the libraries or at the cafeterias. They assisted me with everything I needed to concentrate on my studies and to enjoy life as a young adult, living by myself for the first time. I had to learn to express my needs. I had to learn to be the boss. That was difficult. And I made many mistakes. I still make mistakes. But my mistakes have been valuable lessons. In 1973, I moved to Sweden to work on my dissertation. Again, I hired people there as personal assistants. With their help, after completing my academic training, I worked as a researcher at the university. And throughout the years, I must have employed hundreds of students, immigrants, and people between jobs to work for me. They not only enabled me to study and work and do my household, but also to live the way I wanted, with a rich social life, with many interests, romantic relationships, with travel for work and pleasure. With their help, I became involved in disability work nationally and internationally. I founded several organizations, traveled and lectured widely, was recruited for research positions overseas and headed international projects. Personal assistance was also the key for me to get married. My wife and I were confident that with the help of my assistants, not only would I take care of myself independently of my wife, but I could also share household chores and the work around the house on an equal basis. Well, that was the plan. It hasn't always worked out that way, I'm ashamed to admit. But it was a plan. My wife would not be my lifelong unpaid nurse. We wanted a relationship where we both, independently of each other, could develop and grow, pursue our interests, and have a meaningful career. For example, we both travel in our work to meetings and conferences in Sweden and abroad. When we travel together, it is because we choose to do so, and not because I need her as an assistant to come along. Our decision to have a child was also based on my personal assistance. My assistant would enable me to have an active part in raising and being close to my child. For instance, as a small child, my daughter would go shopping with me for groceries or go fishing. My assistant would stay at a distance behind us and only interfere to prevent an accident. The Swedish Social Security system pays me a monthly amount of money for which I employ 8 part-time assistants to provide me with 18 hours of personal assistance a day. I can pay competitive wages. With that money, I've been able to live in the community with my extensive disability. Yet I'm a profoundly ordinary person. There's nothing special about me. I have no exceptional gifts or talents. Many people in my situation could have equally fulfilling lives. What is special about me is that I've had personal assistance throughout my entire adult life. And that is, sad to say, very special. In countries without personal assistance services, that is in most parts of the world, I would not have had any self-determination. With only help from my family, I would have been very limited. In a residential institution, I probably would have died decades ago. There's a very important message that we ourselves and everybody else must understand and keep in mind. Though we may look different from other people, may walk differently or behave differently, we still are profoundly ordinary people because, like everybody else, we need to be seen for who we are, need to be respected, need to be loved. These needs we share with everyone. These needs make us truly human. to meet these needs, we must work, live, and love in the community, among our friends and family, with the help of personal assistance. Thank you. And now please come with your questions.
Teşekkür ederiz Adolf. Hikayeni yani daha farklı yerlerden takip etmiş olanlarımız vardır aramızda ama bir de senden dinlemiş olmak bizim için çok değerliydi gerçekten de. Evet, başka sorular, yani başka yorumlar. Biz de çok teşekkür ederiz. Sorusu ya da katkısı olan var mı diye bakıyorum. Yani şu ana kadar gelen bir soru yoktu. Şu an bir kişi el kaldırdı. Hemen kim olduğuna bakalım. Evet, Melike el kaldırdı şu an. Evet, şu an.
Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone.
Duyabiliyoruz Melike.
Mr. Rotska, hello again. It is a pleasure to listen to you for the second time. My question regarding personal assistance is, how do you manage air travel? Especially you mentioned that you attended conferences abroad internationally. How do you manage air travel? And secondarily, how personal assistance do you think that affects your emotional relationship with your friends and family?
Adolf, did you hear the question? Adolf, can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything you said, Bahar.
Oh, Melike, can you ask the question again?
Yes, my question regarding personal assistance is, how do you manage air travel, especially with an international basis? And secondly, what do you think if you didn't have personal assistance, what would happen in a perspective of you and your relationship with your wife and your other family members? How would change as psychologically and emotionally?
Oh. Well, the first question is pretty easy because personal assistant doesn't make so much difference when air traveling. I need to have somebody with me anyway. The point though with personal assistance is that I can select my travel assistant. My travel assistants have to have worked for me before at home or in the city here or in Sweden, so they're familiar with everything I need. And then I train them very carefully for being able to handle my wheelchair, to help me with on the plane and get off. And that's a very stressful situation. So I need to pick people who really are not very easily stressed, who are competent. It needs also a bit of physical strength and mechanical aptitude because they have to prepare the wheelchair for travel in storage in the cargo so it doesn't get lost or doesn't get destroyed. Now, the second question, what would happen if I didn't have personal assistance? What would happen in my relationship? This is a very tough question. 4 years ago, there was a talk in the government that they would cut off people my age from personal assistance. So anybody over 65 would not receive any more personal assistance, would have to go back to the local government where you cannot choose who's to work for you, where they could never follow along on trips, of course, where when they would only do the most necessary things. They would send me different persons almost all the time. So I would have to train them over and over and over again. That would be horrible. And that would have meant that my wife would have to hop in and work for me. Now she's retired. She just turned 70. But she still has her projects and still has her own things to do. And I would not like to be dependent on her. As I said before here, we wanted to have a life where both of us, independently of each other, could follow their own interests. And that wouldn't be the case if she would have to work all the time for me. And I wouldn't feel good. I mean, already now, for example, during these Corona times, it has happened that assistants called in very late and said, look, I've got this cold that feels strange. And I said, well, don't come, please, don't come. Go into quarantine. And my wife hopped in. But if this happens too often, I noticed that our relationship, it's tense. I mean, I cannot ask my wife to do as much or do things that I could ask a personal assistant for. It's a big difference. Personal assistants, I have trained myself. Some of them are good at one thing and not so good at other things. So I try to use them for what they are best for. I have 8 different ones. But my wife is by herself and she's not very good at everything. That's impossible. Nobody is. So it wouldn't be so good. And I don't recommend it if you can. I've seen marriages where he was disabled, she not. And he got bigger and bigger and heavier, had his career. And she had to give up her career and got thinner and thinner for all the work. Now, that's not a good solution.
Evet, çok teşekkür ederiz tekrar Adolf. Şimdi birkaç soru daha var. Bir tanesi oldukça uzun bir soru. Öncelikle ondan başlamak istiyorum. Ve İngilizce okumaya devam ediyor olacağım bu arada. First of all, what you said about culture is so valuable to me. You said that independent living is a human movement that realizes pressure. At the moment, in my thesis, I am examining why most of the disabled people in Turkey do not see these pressures and prejudices.
Very bad reception.
Beyza, it's not, we hear you very bad. Yeah, it's difficult to understand. Can you try again? It's okay now.
Nasıl yapmalıyız acaba? Bunu çözemedim şu an.
Sen İngilizce kanalına geçip, çünkü biraz sanki öyle bir takılma vardı gibi.
Evet, tamam, öyle yapayım. Tamam, teşekkürler Bahar.
Yeah.
Evet, şimdi tekrar okuyorum. First of all, what you said about culture is so valuable to me. Can you hear it better?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You said that independent living is a human movement that realizes pressures. At the moment, in my thesis, I am examining why most of the disabled people in Turkey do not see these pressures and prejudices and the relationship between demand and culture. 5 of the 5 people I've talked so far don't have any knowledge of independent living. And when I explain what's going on, they say things like it's hard to demand it. And they said, are we going to report the government to the government? You said it so well that disabled people are acting against themselves because they internalize these pressures. This is the situation in our country right right now, and the Disabled Women's Association is trying to bring these prejudices and pressures to the surface, and I'm grateful to them, and I'm very happy to be one of them. My question to you is, how do we get people without knowledge to demand it? Culture is so sacred in our country, and we are trying to change that. There will be a tremendous change like yours with impatience and by talking to many people. But it is very difficult to ask this from the state in an oppressive situation. I don't know how we will do this. Do you have a suggestion? Of course, my question is not solely about the state, but there needs to be a radical change in order for all disabled people in our country to reach this awareness. This is the question.
Yeah.
Can I add one small thing? We had another question from another person. Actually, I really believe that this is very related to this one. That's why I also wanted to mention it. And it's from Claire, and she asks, challenging discrimination against profoundly ordinary people is not easy when people have not been given a voice and have not known how to express their needs. In Turkey, this has taken many years. Do you have any recommendations for supporting those first pioneers in a non-Western culture? So this is the question from Claire, and we really believe that this question might be of interest to Mima as well. But if you have anything to say about those two questions that are seemingly related to each other, we are very happy to hear what you are going to say.
Well, it's very good that you take those two questions together. Now, I don't want to play out so much on Western or non-Western cultures, because even in Western cultures you can have overprotection, paternalism from the family, from the parents. I mean, since I've become a father myself, I know how easy it is to become overprotective. And if you have a disabled child, there's even more tendency to be overprotective. The whole society is overprotective, takes care of us. It doesn't allow us to take any risks. And as I said, without risks, you cannot grow, you cannot learn. You learn a lot more from your mistakes, from your failures, than from your successes. So you said before in your question, we have not been given a voice. I'd say we have not taken our voice. We have to start with ourselves. How can we demand from other people to look at us as ordinary citizens if we not ourselves look at ourselves as ordinary citizens? We have to start with ourselves. And the best way to do this, in my opinion, is through peer support. Get together with people with the same experience of disability. Doesn't have to be the same diagnosis, no. The experience of discrimination, the experience of overprotection, of helplessness, of not having any rights. Get together and talk about your situation. Inform yourself about the rights you do have, because there probably are rights even in Turkey that apply to citizens. And we are citizens in our countries. So get together. And only by getting together, you will realize that together you can help each other and you have a voice. In small things in the family. For example, I usually talk about children. Children want to help in the kitchen. They want to learn how to cook. It's interesting, it's fun, it tastes good. So allow disabled children to take more responsibility in the family. give them an area over which they are responsible. Put expectations on us and volunteer. We have to volunteer for taking our rightful place in the family. The same goes for school, for the neighborhood. And in the city, and as I said before, independent living, the centers in the states, the way they started, they would put political pressure on their local governments and said, look, these curbs, these pavements, we cannot move there because there are no ramps. And in Berkeley, there is a place where the first ramp was built by disabled students. They came in the middle of the night with their assistants with a bucket of concrete, poured them on the pavement, between pavement and street, and created the wall and ramp. And next morning it was dry, and they could show how to move up and down. And they went to the city, look, do it like we did it. Everywhere, plan it, put it in your budget, that kind of stuff. We have to put pressure on them. And we best do this if we are several people who work for the same goals. And we have to get the public on our side. We have to write in the newspapers. Just today, an hour before the meeting here, I was very happy to learn that an article of mine will be published in a daily paper. And in this article, I drew attention to the COVID, where people with disabilities and COVID and having difficulties to breathe are being denied treatment like oxygen or respirators because the doctors think they have no quality of life to look for. And in this article, I pointed out this, and now it will be published. So I'm very happy about this. We have to do that kind of stuff. We have to be. We have to keep. We have to be alert. We have to be. We shouldn't let them go. We shouldn't let them be in peace. We should. The politicians and the officials in the cities and the countries, we shouldn't leave them alone. We have to keep them reminded of our difficulties. I mean, we are citizens. As such, we have rights. We are human beings. As such, we have rights. Turkey has signed and ratified the convention. Well, they probably didn't know what they were signing it, but they did sign it. So keep them to the word. Make trouble. Make trouble. We have to be troublemakers. Otherwise, if we are silent, other people will decide over us. We got to speak up. We have to take the opportunity. We have to take our voice out, take our place. Power is not given. Power is taken. Rights on paper are not enough. Rights have to be taken and practiced. And also, recently, over the last few years, I've become more and more convinced that the best additional way to go is through the courts. We have rights. I mean, as I said, there's the convention. In Europe, we have the European Convention on Human Rights, which has in many countries, European countries, been ratified and integrated as a national law. So there are rights and conventions, but we have to use them. On paper, nobody cares. Nobody knows about them. How many officials and politicians in Turkey, in your city, know about the convention and Article 19? I'm sure that hardly anybody will know it. And if they know it, what they're doing about it. And who is asking them, what are you doing about this? Who is asking them? Is it the disability organizations? Probably not. They probably haven't heard about that either. No, we got to take the initiative. We have to be the prime engine behind all this. We have to be the motor. It's our cause. We are the ones who suffer if nobody else does anything.
Teşekkür ederiz Adolf. Gerçekten yani tüm bu önerilerin şu açıdan çok değerli. Bence çok güçlendirici bir tarafı var. Hakikaten de çünkü Türkiye'de çoğu zaman kendi gücümüzün farkında olamadığımızı düşünüyorum. Bir araya gelmekte zorlandığımız durumlar olduğu için bazen. Yani bu anlamda çok böyle cesaret verici ve güçlendirici bir kısım olduğunu düşünüyorum. İkinci konuşmacımıza geçmeden hemen önce bir sorumuz daha var. Yani yine aslında birbiriyle alakalı iki soru gibi birleştireceğim. Şöyle ki birinci soru yani ilk defa kişisel asistan seçecek bir kişinin hangi kriterleri önceliklendirmesini önerirsiniz gibi bir soru ve hani benzer bir şekilde Melike'de biraz önce söz almış olan Melike'de bunu merak ettiğini, çünkü kendisinin de serebral palsisinin olduğunu ama tekerlekli sandalye kullanmadığını ama yine de kişisel asistanla dan destek alabileceğini düşündüğünü ve o yüzden de o kriterleri merak ettiğini söyledi. Dolayısıyla sorularımız bunlar.
So the question was, what to look for in a personal assistant? Right? Well,
evet, doğru.
Yeah, the way I would describe it is that you first have to be aware of what do you need. And in the personal assistance user cooperative that I started in the 80s, we used to have a course for people to become members in the cooperative. And there was even an exam at the end. And the course was starting out by the first evening, I would ask them, what do you want to achieve in your life? Oh, that was a big question. If you have a disability, if you're dependent on other persons for what you can do, etc., usually don't have many objectives, many plans, because it always depends on somebody else. If somebody else doesn't, she says, let's go to the movies, you don't go because you don't dare to ask your relatives all the time, your friends all the time. They might get tired of you. So what do you want to achieve in your life? And then how could a personal assistant help you with that? That's already more specific. And then it also means what kind of skills must that person have? And how much time, assistance hours a day would you need? For example, would you need somebody at night or only during the day? Would you need somebody on weekdays only or also on weekends? And of course, if you need somebody to help you to the bathroom, you need somebody pretty much every day. That kind of stuff. So you have to know, beware what you need. And then when it comes to what skills does a person have to help you with these things? Well, if it's stuff like getting you dressed, helping you get washed, go to the toilet, I mean, everybody does that. So most people already have an idea, and you will have to show them how to do it. You will have to direct them. You will have to be the boss and show. And that's not always very easy. Most of us aren't even able to express their wishes. You have to become aware of them yourself first. It's easy when you have to go to the bathroom. You feel it. Yeah, help, I need to go to the bathroom. But if you want to have help with your hobbies, with your little projects, for example, I like plants. So in front of me, behind the computer, I have lots of plants on the wall, and I can see that some of them need water. I have to fix it right away afterwards. Some have pests and do badly. So you have to be aware, and you have to tell people precisely what you want them to do. Don't just sit there and hope they can read your wishes without you opening your lips. It doesn't work that way. So the person that you want to hire needs to be able to listen when you talk, but you need to talk. Don't forget that you need to talk. So not only ask yourselves, what does the personal assistant need to do and how does he or she have to be? Or ask yourself, what do I have to do? Communications is both ways. And communication is the main thing. You have to understand each other. And that's not just a language question, it's also how you speak, how you explain, how exact you are in your language. That's all very important because the assistant is just a human being. Sometimes they're stressed. Sometimes they have wars in the family. If they have kids, they worry about their kids and they come and are not always completely present. So you have to be super exact and clear about what you need and what you have. And if the person forgets what you said, doesn't follow precisely what you said, maybe you didn't express yourself clearly enough. Look at the fault in your own behavior, because that's easier to fix. You cannot fix another person, but you can fix yourself. You can try to improve yourself, but it's very difficult to improve another person. And it's a matter of experience. I mean, in the beginning, I made many mistakes. You know, I want to have a nice guy or a nice girl. It doesn't work like this. You need to have people, you need to be able to test people for a trial period. Not only weeks, but maybe months until you make a decision. But of course, you have to have the means to pay people during that trial period. That's very important, that you have a trial period. Well, this is an endless topic. I've had personal assistants now over 60 years, so I could talk forever, so I stop now.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Sorularımız şimdilik bu kadar. Yani çok keyifli bir etkileşim oldu bence. Hani katılımcılarımız ve sizin aranızda. Çok teşekkürler bu yüzden tekrar. Şimdi ise Mima'nın sunumuna geçeceğiz. Ben öncelikle kendisini tanıtmak istiyorum kısaca. Miroslava Mima Ivanovic, Montenegro'da yaşayan engelli bir avukat ve engelli hakları savunucusu. Şu anda da Avrupa Bağımsız Yaşamı Gençlik Ağı Yönetim Kurulu'nda eş başkan yardımcısı olarak görev yapıyor. Ve aynı zamanda VOCA Engelli Gençler Girişimi'nin yöneticisi. Kendisi bugün bize kişisel asistanların hayatını nasıl değiştirdiğini anlatacak. Ve ben de kendisinin sunumunu heyecanla bekliyorum. Yani bu sistemi Türkiye'de en çok isteyen kişilerden biri olarak hani ben de tüm konuklarımız da eminim ki aynı şekilde heyecanlıdır diye düşünüyorum. Mima'nın bir sunumu da var. Onu da ekrana yansıtıyor olacağım ben bu esnada. Hemen ayarlıyorum. Evet. Sunumumuz bu şekilde. Mima, sözü sana bırakabiliriz şimdi.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to speak about personal assistance, which is key for independent living, as adults said, and thank you for adults to inspire me before my part of, let's say, webinar. As you heard many times, and thank you very much for these warm regards. I am a female lawyer with disability. I'm 31 years old, and I'm active in disability rights movement in Montenegro, in my country, since 2007. So I was very young. I was 17 when I started to be active member of Association of Youth with Disabilities of Montenegro, where I worked since until 2018. And as you heard, I am active now in Anil and in Boca Bay, actually the bay where my hometown Kotor is placed. On the third slide, you can see actually the scope of my need for personal assistance. I get ill by arthritis. It's a rheumatic disease when I was 3, and this type of juvenile arthritis causes, let's say, impairments or on at heart or at eyes, and actually I get the second one option, let's say. So when I was 5, my vision was impaired. So since I was 5, my vision is impaired, and I have several physical impairments which are caused by arthritis. So arthritis affects joints, and through medication, I also was taken by osteoporosis. So there's, let's say, several diagnoses or medical aspects of my, let's say, disability. But moreover, I will say actually more. Actually, what does it mean? It means that my need for personal assistance depends of my current, let's say, health status, whether I am in pain, because, for example, 4 or 5 days in a month, I have pain in my joints, and when I get injection, I come back. Actually, I feel better, and in that pain phases, I need more personal assistance, and it should be very, let's say, just to find the word, sorry. So my personal assistants have to be very careful how to assist me and to not cause additional pain, which is one of, let's say, challenges in reaching for personal assistance, persons who would work for me. Also, as considering that arthritis is a progressive disease, and during the time my physical impairment increased, and also my need for personal assistance increased during the time. So, for example, I needed maybe, let's say, 12 hours maximum per day in 2009 when I started to use personal assistance, but now in pain phases, let's say, I need 24 hours per day. On the next slide, let's say from this slide I will start to speak a little bit more about my life, about personal assistance. Actually, when I started to be active member of the Organization of Persons with Disabilities I mentioned before, I started to attend many trainings related to disability rights, and there I was informed about principles of philosophy of independent living and heard about personal assistance. That personal assistance is a service which enables you to do what you want, when you want, and with whom you want. And that actually this is not, this is completely another, let's say, perspective of looking at persons with disabilities, of seeing their lives. As personal assistance, as Adolf said, is really key and precondition for every, let's say, free decision making by persons who need this service. When I heard about personal assistance, I was 17 years old, and as you know, as every student of high school, I also thought about what will be with me when I finish high school. Okay, I'm here, I finished elementary school, my mom supported me, I finished high school. No, actually, I will finish in 1 year high school, and my mom is supporting me, my colleagues from class are supporting me, but they will go, all of them will go somewhere on studies, and what I will do? Is it possible? And is it possible to do something else than to just stay in Kotor, enroll that faculty which I have in Kotor? Those are two ones, one related to maritime affairs. I'm not interested in that at all. And the second is related to tourism. But actually, what to say, I wasn't interested so much in anything in that time, maybe only in biology. But I was just thinking, is it possible to do anything else than to stay with my mom, who knows everything about me, because I can't do it without her. If I want to go out, I need her to drive me, to walk, to help me to walk, and so on. So is it possible to do something else, to have my own secrets, to have my own life, and to have something which my mom doesn't know? And then I, during these trainings, where I heard about rights of persons with disabilities, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and so many other international and national documents, I realized that law is something very useful. And although I thought that although I thought that the curriculum of Faculty of Law is very boring, because I saw that I had to learn so many different branches of law, but always law. I decided to enroll that faculty because I saw that law is very useful and I can use it for many things, and maybe change my society and use change of my life to change lives of other people. And what I want to say now is that really our role, role of persons with disabilities, is to change, to use the change of our lives to help others to change their lives. Then I decided, actually in Kotor, there is no faculty of law, and I decided to move to Podgorica, which is capital of Montenegro, from Kotor, and I have spoken with my very good friend Milan Saranovic from Association of Youth with Disabilities in Montenegro. He's not alive now. He's died a few years ago, and I'm very thankful for him because he used the change of his life to help me to change my life. I have spoken with him, and he offered me support to arrange accommodation in dormitory and to help me to find some personal assistance. What is actually the most important, because actually in the end, the most important help by him was to psychologically support me. So he and Goran Matanovic, who is also active in the disability rights movement, psychologically supported me. Were encouraging me, and were very often discussing with my mother and explaining her that I have a right to try to live as other persons. So there were many, let's say, struggles with my family, with my grandmother, mother, and brother, but mainly with my mother, to explain her how I will arrange my life, who will support me, who will be so good to support me in everything I need, and how I will succeed without her. What is important to say in this let's say, moment, when a person with disability wants to shift his or her life, to go outside, let's say, not outside the family, but to switch help of family with personal assistance. I don't want to say that in all cases you have you need only personal assistant to help to support you. It's not the case. You have to choose what will you do with your family, what with your friends, and what with your personal assistant. And if you have personal assistant, it doesn't mean that you are not still I don't know, a daughter, a brother, a mother, whatever. So when I wanted to shift help of my mother, physical help, what will be with your daughter, with your child, but it's also about what I will do now, because persons who help, especially family members who help person with disability in their family, identify themselves as a caregiver of person with disability. I in that time, I really didn't well understand that. I really didn't understand well that I'm the time actually influencing the identity and the role of my mother, and that she feels bad not only because she was afraid what will be with me, whether I will be able to find adequate person and to fulfill my needs, but also because she loses one very important role in her life, and that was the role of caregiver. Only few years ago, a few years after that, when I moved to Podgorica, I understand that, and I started to speak with my mother. Mom, you don't have to be my personal assistant. You have to be my mother. You have to listen to me, and I have to listen to you, and we have to enjoy our time. And it's very sad that we use our time to, I don't know, to help me to go to the bathroom, or to help me to, I don't know, put me in the wheelchair, instead of using our time to, for example, go to some, I don't know, to go to walk, and you don't have, you don't need to actually spend your cell phone, I don't know, pushing my wheelchair, but to actually to give me your heart, to use that time when my personal assistant is pushing my wheelchair, to use that time in speaking, in actually that's what daughter and mother really should do. So those, let's say, were my beginnings. When I had those very, let's say, interesting discussions with my family, how I will succeed, what to do, I will, I don't know, completely destroy myself, who will do everything for me what I need. I then found this argument. I said, okay, let me try, and if I don't succeed, I will come back to Porto. It's not a problem. I will have a pause of 1 year in my studies, but I will not be neither the first nor the last who will actually graduate with 1 year of, let's say, delay. And then I moved to Podgorica in September 2009, when I started to use personal assistance. So next slide, I let's say listed some benefits of using this personal assistance. What is the characteristic, let's say, of life of person with disability who uses personal assistance? That's a real implementation of principles of philosophy of independent living. When you are hearing these principles, they are very great principles, blah blah, I don't know, decision making and so on. It's very, let's say, okay to hear them, but what they really mean, I first realized when I started to use personal assistance. When I said to my first personal assistant, I said her, oh, what to do? I don't know what to do first. Maybe do I don't know whether to eat firstly, to have a lunch, or to go to my friends. I don't know what to do. And she said, okay, let me know, and I will do what you decide. So personal assistant learned me for the first time, actually, that I have to make my own decisions. And in that moment, I realized what is free decision making, actually. That if I decide to go to France and I become hungry, that I am guilty because I get hungry. Nobody else will be. So there is also a responsibility and control of my own life, as she will do everything I say. So that's my responsibility. Here you can see, let's say, some my benefits of personal assistance. What I wanted to say here is that I now had possibility to have some my own secrets, and let's say I had opportunity to share them with the persons I choose to share them with. So my mom didn't know about many, for example, parties, or I don't know where I went with my personal assistant and so on. And it's little, but it's life. And this make you feel that you're not subject, but you will live life. Then I want to say that I also traveled to USA with my personal assistant. So personal assistance is, as I said, precondition for everything. If you don't have personal assistance, you can't do anything. But with personal assistance, you can go and arrange your life and feel really what responsibility and decision making mean. On the next slide, I will try to be as short as possible. Just here are some just to check. Here are some photos, as I mentioned before. And next slide is my personal assistant. I traveled with her in USA. And on the next slide, I will a little bit say about organization of PA. Organization of PA in Montenegro is really difficult thing, as it is not supported and organized by state and by local authorities. Montenegro has ratified CRPD in 2009. And in 2013, the new law on social and child protection was adopted. And in this law, the personal assistance is prescribed as one of social and child protection services and should be funded by state, but it is not the case even today. And because of that, I'm currently litigating before the basic court to have a personal assistant funded and organized by the state. Actually, not organized, but funded by state and enabled, let's say, licensing the providers of this service by the state. When I started to use personal assistance, I engaged one personal assistant. As I was in Podgorica only when I had lectures, and in first year of studies it was, I don't know, maybe 10 days in the month. And the most time I spent in my hometown, Kotor, where my mom helped me. therefore, I could organize one personal assistant to provide me with support. Now, considering that my need for personal assistance increased due to characteristics of my impairment, of my disability, now I need 24 hours per day of assistance, but I am engaging 3 personal assistants, and actually they are providing me with around 12 or to 60 hours of personal assistance per day, and the other uncovered, let's say, hours I use the help of my friends. Why I say help of friends and help of family and assistance and support by personal assistance, because these two things are completely different. As personal assistants support you to do what you want and when you want and how you want, while the family and friends help you to do what you want and very often how you want, but when they can. So there is no so big scope of decision making when you don't have personal assistance. I want just to switch one slide before, just to, if you can say a few things more, just to say one more thing. That the personal assistance is not covered funded by state and local authorities, and it's not supported in organization, means that I have to fund personal assistance, and I do it through personal recommendations, so through my, let's say, social network, and through ads, and this is very challenging. So now on the next slide I will say a little bit more how it is challenging and why. As I said, there is no support by state, but what is challenging when you want to recruit personal assistants? Challenging is that there is very little number of persons who are willing and interested to work this job. Firstly, because there are many cultural and attitudinal barriers towards persons with disabilities, let's say. So persons with disabilities, as Adolf said, are hopeless and so on, have to be enormously grateful if you do something for them and so on. And the position of personal assistance user is not hopeless, and it's not, it's completely different and contrary to those attitudes which are most common in our culture and mentality. So it is very hard to find a person who will respect you as a human being and who will respect you as a person who is, let's say, boss, who actually is employee. What I wanted to say is employee, the right word. So, because also, even if you pay somebody and pay him or her and offer him or her salary, which is agreed between you both, so there is no, I don't know, some pressure, or I don't know, to, you know, to work on for some salary which is not, let's say, acceptable by personal assistant. Those persons very often act and behave like they are doing some good thing and they are not doing their job. So you have there are very big challenges to have good communication between this, and you have to actually acquire, and personal assistants help me to acquire communicational skills and to, let's say, struggle with this, to deal with this issue. What is additionally, let's say, challenging is that this service is not funded by state, and even when you have some good personal assistant, it is very hard to obtain it, actually, to have him or her to stay with you, because you cannot actually provide him with salary or working conditions which would be enabled if state and local authorities support this service. There are some, in next slide, additional challenges when we talk about women with disabilities who use personal assistance. Here in Montenegro, there is a lot of gender discrimination, and when you are a woman and additionally have a disability, this is a very challenging situation. It would be maybe, let's say, more acceptable to see men with disabilities, when men with disability who is employee, but women with disability at home, let's say, sweet, small, as I am, and she say, please do that, please be on time. This is not very acceptable for majority of our persons. But I have to say that you will always find one person, and I found one, my uncle. She's 12 years with me, and this is not impossible. It's challenging, and you have to know that that's challenging, and to prepare yourself for that. What is additional challenging is that there are some additional needs of women with disabilities related to menstrual hygiene and other things. So somebody is more difficult to find somebody who would help you with that things than if you were men with disability. So I hope I didn't spend too much time, and I am now open for all your questions. Thank you.
Biz de çok teşekkür ederiz Mima. Benim için çok verimli bir sunum oldu gerçekten de. Böyle çok fazla düşündüğüm pek çok noktaya kendi deneyimleriniz üzerinden değinmiş oldunuz. Melike'nin bir sorusu var. Sanırım zaten açık. Tamam, evet Melike.
Hello, Mina. First of all, thank you for this amazing presentation. And as a disabled young woman who would like to have a career in the legal world, I would like to ask, your opinion, your advice on legal profession, and, you being disabled, how affected your legal education and legal career. And, do you think as disabled legal professionals, people like you can create a change? What we should do to create a change, and what we should do to be more visible in legal community?
Thank you for your question. I want to say now that I'm not an attorney, but I am a lawyer, and I do represent persons with disabilities within the administrative proceedings before the administrative, let's say, institutions. and I cooperate with many attorneys to help them to go to the court. For persons with disabilities, I think is essential to be a lawyer, and I think that actually every person with disability who wants to realize some right here in Montenegro has to have some legal expertise, unfortunately. So it is very important. I saw that actually from my experience, that we first initiate legal proceedings to realize our own rights. I knew that based on law and social and child protection, I have right to personal assistance, and I knew that since 2000, let's say 14. But I submitted the request for realization of that right, for exercise and recognition of that right in December 2017. That right is recognized and by relevant institution, by the Center for Social Work, but it's not implemented. And because of that, I initiated the court proceeding. So we firstly have to fight for our own rights. And then with our example to encourage other persons with disabilities to do that with our help. I am active in providing free legal aid, but also in let's say preparation of legal documents, legal advocacy. Let's say when documents are adopted by the government, local and state governments and parliaments. It is important for us as persons with disabilities, I think, maybe I'm not right, to firstly profile ourselves as lawyers who know very well disability rights, because this is something different that we bear with us, and what we can offer as lawyers, because as you know, there are so many lawyers and so many lawyers do similar things, but we as a persons with disabilities have to offer something different, and I think that that's a really different thing, and think disability rights, because they are not so well known by other lawyers who are not persons with disabilities.
Thank you for the response. I want to just add a little quick thing here. In your country and in other countries, as much as you know, can governments deny personal assistance for someone if they think the person is not, quote, disabled enough? For example, I've just write it in the chat. I have cerebral palsy, but I am not a wheelchair user, but I still think that I need assistance, but in home, in daily life, I'm able to do many things on my own. So can governments deny this? What is criteria for applying personal assistance in your country? And also to this question also to Adolf as well. What is criteria in Sweden and maybe European Union in more general? What is legal standard here?
Okay, I can go first, or you, Adolf? What do you prefer?
Well, I'll go you first, ladies first.
Okay, thanks. In Montenegro, there is one, let's say, actually two conditions, let's say, for personal assistance. You have to exercise right to personal disability allowance or allowance for care and assistance. This is those are actually social benefits, material benefits, financial, let's say, benefits. And the other is that you are employed or are actually in some form of education. Actually, the second is that you are active in some way. But there is one exception, that if there are some important social, I don't know, family and so on issues, and it is in interest of social and child protection, you can be recognized as entitled for personal assistance. The thing here is, my opinion, is that regardless of your domestic, let's say, provisions, you have to check whether the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has primate in implementation, so has to be implemented before your laws, which are not in line with this international document. So if your country ratify the convention and it should be implemented directly, then even if your authorities deny you the right to personal assistance, you can challenge that decision even before the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So that's my opinion, my point of view, let's say, from the legal part. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, in most countries, in fact, I don't know any country where the question would be whether the government has the right to deny. It's the other way around. You have to be eligible. You have to prove that you fulfill the criteria set forth in the law. In Sweden, it's like this. You have to be under the age of 65 when you get it. Once you have the personal assistance allowance, the monthly payment, once you have these payments, you can continue beyond the age of 65, like in my case. So below 65, you can be as young as possible. You have to be either developmentally disabled, having a cognitive, an autistic-like condition. You have to have a permanent disability, either physical or sensory or psychological, psychiatric disability, or you have to have an acquired brain damage as an adult. These are very strange conditions. But the most difficult to win is you have to have at least the need of at least 20 hours of assistance a week for what they call the 5 basic activities. And that will be in the food situation, in dressing, undressing, going to the toilet, bathing, in communication, if you are non-verbal. And these, the people who need to help you have to have very good insight in your needs. These are the 5 conditions. And of course, the way they are framed, and there's no other way to formulate this more exact, because of this diffuse formulation, it comes to trouble for us. For example, when you have the need of fewer than 20 hours a week, you are responsibility of the local government and not anymore of the national government. So the national government, in order to save money, will do their best to prove that you don't need 20 hours of assistance, that you need much less, because then they are rid of you, because it's the responsibility of the local government. So I give you just an example. Presently, for the last few years actually, about 88% of all the first-time applicants for these personal assistance payments, 88% of the applicants are denied the payments. But you can go to the next court, go to a court and appeal that decision, but you'll need a lawyer for that. And there's been a very lucrative industry for lawyers now fighting for your rights for personal assistance. They are specialized and they're expensive. And many of those companies that provide personal assistance services also have lawyers who will fight for your personal assistance, because that's good business, your good business for the company that provides these services. Now, we've had 19,000 of people who had the right of personal assistance. The peak was the year 2010. And since then, the number has dwindled down to 14,000 people. Not because of people didn't need so much assistance anymore, but because the conditions, the criteria have been much hardened. So now it's very difficult to get personal assistance. And to give you an example, a friend of mine with a high spinal cord injury, who had about, I think he had about 15 hours a day of personal assistance, was called up by this case manager at the National Social Security Fund, which pays the money. And they used to check you every second year whether you still need it, whether some miracle had occurred and you didn't need any personal assistance anymore. So he gets the phone call, and the guy, the case handler asks, have there been any changes in your condition? And my friend says, oh, no, I'm just before. Well, that's too bad, says the case handler, because there have been recent court decisions which mean that you don't fulfill the criteria anymore and will lose your personal assistance payments. Yeah, that was very easy to get rid of him. The courts are constantly challenging the decisions, and not in our favor, I must say. There's also at the same time a kind of hardening social climate in Sweden. You can see this in many spheres. And in addition to that, we've had the bad luck that some people have abused the system, have simulated conditions quite successfully and gotten enormous amounts of money without having a disability at all. And the police has found out they were gotten to trial, taken to trial, and gotten prison sentences, etc. And the media are very keen on reporting to this. So politicians have very little popular support in trying to improve the current system. Yeah, sad to say. To me, it means that you have to fight to get legislation for personal assistance that guarantees you the payment. But once you got it, you have to continue fighting to show what it does and what you can do with it, how you can benefit, how you can become a productive member of society because of that. And never stop fighting, because if you don't, they'll take it away from you.
Evet, çok teşekkürler Mima ve Doğu. İkinize de çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Şimdi öncelikle Bahar şöyle bir duyuru yaptı. Katılımcılar için küçük bir anketimiz var. Birkaç soruluk. Linkini chatbox'tan paylaştı. Ona ayrılmadan önce tıklarsanız ve doldurursanız çok seviniriz şimdiden. Çok teşekkür ederiz. Bir de sonlandırmadan biraz süreyi bir 5 dakika kadar aşacak gibiyiz ama hani bir iki soru daha vardı. Onları da eklemek istiyorum hızlıca. Belki hani söyleyeceğiniz çok hızlı şeyler olur. Çok fazla da kimsenin vaktini almak istemiyoruz. Birincisi Claire'in şöyle bir sorusu var. Aslında böyle biraz yani birbirimizden ne kadar beslendiğimizden bahsettik. Biraz buna dair bir soru olduğu için önemli buluyorum. Dolayısıyla böyle biraz daha genç yaştan başlamak ve hevesli olan kişileri destekleyebilmek için hani onlar daha okuldalarken vesaire destekleyebilmek için neler yapabiliriz? Yani bunun gibi yani daha genç kişileri, özellikle genç engelli kız çocuklarını biraz daha bağımsız yaşamaya teşvik edecek mentörlük gibi sistemler var mı bildiğiniz? Biraz buna dair bir sorusu var Claire'in. Ben hani önemli bulduğum için sormak istedim. Soruyu tekrar edebilirim ya da cevaplamak ister misiniz?
No, I can answer if you want now.
Evet, lütfen Mima.
Okay, thank you. It is very hard to, let's say, encourage, to let's say, have some structure or some, I don't know, way of encouraging women with disabilities, especially young ones, to start to use personal assistance. What is important that in everyday situations, in actually communication with young women with disabilities, in different activities they're participating in, you can actually know who is potential, let's say, candidate for personal assistance, because I think that also there are some that actually not all women with disabilities are willing to live independently, and it's not about having disability or not, being a person with disability or not. Actually, there are more and more persons with and without disabilities who like to be dependent of their parents, for example, and so on, who like to not live independent life. So you have to actually feel your target group, to feel your users, your friends, female friends with disabilities, and see where is potential for independent life, and then to work in, let's say, one-to-one and not so structured. I think that I was empowered only because I felt that there is human supporting, that there is let's say a love that those people think about me, not because I was in some structure, some method, and I don't know. This is also, let's say, some type of objectivization, let's say. So feel who have potential, and use that potential, let it grow. That's my let's say suggestion. Thank you.
Teşekkürler Mima. Son olarak bir sorumuz daha var. Onu da paylaşayım hemen. Yani bu arada bu mentörlük ve şey yapma meselesine de çok katılıyoruz ve hani böyle bir dernek olarak da biz kendi aramızda düşünmeye başladığımız şeylerden bir tanesi olduğunu da söyleyebilirim. Çünkü yani genç engelli kişiler, yani bizim de şu sıralar böyle biraz odamızda, onu söyleyebilirim. Son olarak yani bu soru aslında Adolf'un ilk konuşmasının ardından gelen bir soruydu ama Mima'yı daha fazla bekletmemek adına biraz sona bırakmıştık. Bu soruyu da kapatalım. Şöyle bir soru. Robotlar gibi bazı teknolojik tasarımlar acaba insani asistanları, insan asistanların yerine geçebilir mi? Bunun için umutlanmalı mıyız yoksa umutlanmamalı mıyız diye de ben ekleyeyim. Yani böyle bir...
Well, not in my lifetime. I don't know about your lifetime. Considering how often I have problems with my computer and my other electronic things, I wouldn't bet that I wouldn't let a robot lift me and put me into the wheelchair. No, it's like, thank you. It'll take an enormous amount of time and experiments. I know that there is a large interest in these issues, especially in Japan and other countries where they have a high number of older people. It's all in the interest of saving costs, but don't expect it within the next 10 years.
Evet, burada yavaş yavaş sonlandıralım istiyoruz. Sonlandırmadan önce Bahar'ın küçük bir isteği var hepimizden. Yani böyle panelistler olarak sanırım ancak görünebiliyoruz aslında. Katılımcılar sanırım kameralarını açamıyorlar maalesef. Ama eğer açarsak hepimiz, yani tüm panelistler olarak da bir fotoğraf çekebilir miyiz diye sordu Bahar. Herkes için uygunsa ben şey yapacağım. Ne denir? Ekran görüntüsü alacağım. Evet. Bir saniye, hemen bir minik ayar daha yapabilirsem kendime. Yapamadım. Evet, alıyorum ekran görüntüsünü. Evet, gülümseyin. Evet, çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bugünkü katılımınız için gerçekten çok verimli ve çok keyifli bir aktivite oldu. Yani Türkiye'de de kişisel asistanlık konusunda hani yapılan en büyük etkinliklerden bir tanesiydi diye düşünüyorum aslında. O yüzden de bize vakit ayırdığınız için ve deneyimlerinizi bizimle paylaştığınız için çok teşekkür ederim Adolf ve Mima'ya. Katılımcılara da çok teşekkür ederim. Sorular yine ilk webinarımızda olduğu gibi çok keyifliydi ve çok derindi bence. O yüzden de çok keyifli vakit geçirmiş olduk diye düşünüyorum. Herkese de iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Buradan tekrar sevgili Gökçe'ye ve Emrah'a da teşekkür ediyoruz destekleri için. Evet, bu kadar söyleyeceklerim. Görüşmek üzere, hoşça kalın.